That 70s Remodel, a Build Original series, is brought to you by Huber Engineered Woods.
This home started with all the usual 1970s problems: dated design, poor insulation, and inefficient materials that just couldn't keep up with today's standards. But this isn't just a cosmetic update, it's a full performance overhaul, and that starts with the building envelope. Upgrading the enclosure to Zip System R sheething helped us boost the home's thermal performance while streamlining our install. It gave us a continuous exterior insulation and a built-in water-resistant barrier all in one step. In Utah's variable climate, we rely on Zip System products for both remodels and new builds. They help us manage moisture, air leakage, and insulation without overcomplicating the wall assembly. With Zip System and AdvantTech, we get fewer steps, faster installation, and job site durability that holds up even when the weather doesn't cooperate. These are trusted brands among top builders for a reason: reliability, performance, and ease of use on real-world job sites. Learn more and check out available rebates at huberwood.com. Hey guys, we have a special treat for you. We're doing a little bonus episode for That 70s Remodel where I'm going to take you inside some of the nitty-gritty details, talk to you a little bit about some things that happened during the process, and be completely transparent with all of our pricing and timeline. Let's get going. All right, this is going to be great, quick and easy, but I wanted to recap this entire project for you and really just start from the beginning, talking about some of the problems that we had with this particular project, our schedule, the solutions we had to the problems, our process, the costs of the build, and some of the lessons we learned. Because if you watched the entire series, you saw that we had a few little things that went wrong throughout the process, and happens with every single remodel. So there's always something. But let's start with the goal. The homeowner wanted a really, really great short-term rental, and the house was in an incredibly desirable area. So right at the bottom of some of Utah's best ski resorts, right at the mouth of the canyon, the house was a perfect location. It just wasn't in great shape. So the homeowner purchased this home many years ago. It was actually their first home that they bought as a family. They invested into this property and raised their family there for, I believe, about 10 years. And then when they got to a financial place where they could stably purchase a bigger kind of move-up style home, one of the things they wanted to make work was that they could keep this property and use it as a rental and bring in long-term income for the family for many years. So the house was in a great spot. It just wasn't a great house. Had good bones, but just had some issues. So a few of the things that the homeowner thought about before they made this decision were really like, what is the supporting data that says I can make money off of this house? So this is just a little screenshot of kind of the surrounding city of where this house is located. The house is located right about there. And this is the canyon that takes you up to Snowbird, takes you up to a lot of Utah's good ski resorts. So you can see all of these short-term rentals that are around the property location of this particular house. So on average, these are renting for $175 to $245 a day, and they have a 35 to 42% rental. So they're occupied 35 to 42% of the time. There's a ton more potential, and you're seeing houses in here that are much higher rental rates. This one in particular is right next to the homeowner's house that they were wanting to change. So It's a great spot for short-term rentals, especially in the winter months. And that average rental rate is like year-round. So if we think about ski season, that's obviously going up significantly. So we decided to go forward with this process. We have our demo. Our demo is the very first step of this build. We had a pretty rough demo story. So this house, it was spring of 2023 when we decided to start demolition on this house. If you've been to Utah in the springtime, it can be 80 degrees one day, it can be snowing one day, it could do both in the same day. And we do get a lot of moisture that time of year. So it was really kind of a guessing game and a calendar game of trying to figure out like, when can we start this? Because we want to be done within 3 months, start to finish. So how do we queue everything up to make sure that we're done on time and things move along really smoothly? So we started demolition of this project and we ran into a lot of things. Like this rotten sheathing from the roof was a common issue. There's even some of this that has fire damage. That is from a barbecue fire that happened on the side of the house at some point. We just had poor construction kind of techniques. This area right here is the walkout from the kitchen space out to the backyard. And the person that owned the home before them, or who built the home originally, they actually had this whole exterior covered in a brick exterior, and then they formed and poured concrete stairs in front of the brick. So this is all rotten. You'll see and notice a whole bunch of rotten wood across the back side of the house. It was just a common theme here on this house, and a lot of that fire damage was happening over here on the side of the project. Another thing you'll notice, and you watch the videos, you'll know that we had this cardboard sheeting on the outside of the house. It was not a great product. It still is not a great product, but we had to deal with that, and it was quite an interesting process. We had a bunch of hidden issues. Now, when you're doing a remodel, as a builder, the more remodels you do, the more comfortable you start to feel as you're walking through a remodel. When you're looking at something, trying to figure out like, what's behind the walls? What's behind what I can't see right now? And based on the material that's used in the build and just kind of years of expertise, you start to understand like what you can expect that's hidden behind the walls or within the roof, but you can never be fully sure. We don't have X-ray vision, so we do our very best to try and guess and really put into the budget like what we think we're gonna run into, but there's just some stuff that we don't know. So I put this video over here because this is one of the things that is kind of a key indicator that we have issues with how the house is sealed. So this is actually the front porch. So underneath here, we had our soffit material. Then the entire house just had a solid roof soffit. So we did not have any ventilation. This was solid wood. And then we had a piece of wood across the front here. So this is supposed to be an unvented roof. Well, as you can see, we have this giant wasp's nest that was built up within that roof. And that wasn't the only one. We had 3 or 4 of them around the side of the house. We also found birds' nests, and a bird is much larger than a wasp. So as you can imagine, we're seeing things get into the house that we normally wouldn't. And so now we know that we have an issue. Things are open, animals, creatures are getting in the house. We need to seal it a whole lot better. And one of the things that we obviously didn't expect but ran into a lot, if you watch the videos, is this, which is a mix of carpenter ants and termites. Now, a lot of this damage came from those areas that we were just talking about where the concrete steps were poured right up to the brick or siding exterior. All that moisture is building up in there. It's a breeding ground. It is a perfect spot for pests. So this is actually the end of one of those floor trusses that's just absolutely destroyed, and we had to come through and replace those. But these are things that there's just no way for you to know till you start tearing into the house and you run into these hidden issues that you have to fix throughout the way. You can't just leave that kind of stuff and feel good about it. At least I can't. So we talked about the timing of when we started this remodel. It was springtime in Utah. And again, we have these drastic swings. So this is actually day 2 of our demolition process. You'll notice all of this rotten cardboard sheeting. The upper level doesn't look too bad, surprisingly, but it's not a great product. All this lower stuff is where we saw all those termites and carpenter ant damage. We had a huge leak. All the water was coming in and we didn't have a kickout flashing. So this is building up and all that water is running down here into that chimney chase. At the bottom of that chimney chase was a sheet of plywood that you'll see a photo of here in just a second, completely rotted through. So this entire lower portion of the chimney structure had to be rebuilt. We had a bunch of framing along this backside that we had to redo, and a few other little issues throughout the way that really kind of caused some problems with the construction. This photo here was one of my really enjoyable Saturdays on the job site. I got a phone call from the demo crew who said, it is pouring rain over here at the job site, and we weren't remodeling the inside. So this was a full exterior remodel. We stripped the house down. We pulled insulation out. So when you're outside, looking back at the house, we're looking at the back side of the drywall. So all of this is their finished home that is out in a very, very heavy rainstorm. You can also see that we took all the windows and doors out. So we have huge holes. We have finished bedrooms inside. We had furniture inside of the house. So spring rainstorm, heavy, heavy rains. I spent my Saturday out there nailing up all of this plastic. Our goal is to just protect the house. This wasn't something that we had included. This wasn't something we'd planned on doing. But in the event where it starts raining like that, we don't really have much of a choice. So thankfully for us, we were lucky enough to have the roof already dried in. So we weren't too worried about water getting up into the attic. But all of this that you're seeing within here is the backside of the drywall. And all of these openings, all of them, there's no windows. We took everything out. You can see I boarded up the main floor, mostly because I was worried about people getting in. No one was living in the house while we were doing construction, so I just wanted it to be secure. But we didn't take the time or money to board up the upstairs. So I spent my Saturday out there wrapping the house in plastic. Now, there were a few things that happened on this project that were unexpected costs. And one of the big ones was the electrical. So this is actually a shot of when my dad and I went out to look at the house for the first time, kind of tour around and see what the homeowners wanted to do. And we weren't doing any electrical upgrades. We weren't doing anything that would have changed any of the electrical. So we didn't think we'd have any issues with that. We didn't include any budget for electrical. Well, this right here is our issue. That's a 100 amp service. And sometime between when the owners purchased it and when we started remodeling it, they had hired somebody to come out and put in 2 electric car chargers in the garage. 100 amp service cannot handle that. So we had an issue that we needed to fix in order to really properly run the house well. They had also wired the car chargers and tied them directly into the meter. It was not great. It just wasn't something I felt comfortable with. And then halfway through the process, we actually ended up finding that we had enough money in our budget to be able to upgrade the entire HVAC system to the house. The house is a 3-level, so there's actually a basement down here. Down in the basement, there was another 3 bedrooms and a family room, 1 bathroom. So when we started, this middle level of the house was air conditioned. Basement wasn't, the upstairs wasn't. So when we decided to change and add all of the HVAC equipment, we ended up air conditioning the entire house, which brought in the need for more power. So that wasn't a cost that we had included. That actually ended up costing us, the new 200 amp service install was about $26.80, plus we had some additional fees from the power company. So wasn't something that we had planned on. And then that HVAC system. We weren't planning on redoing the HVAC system. However, we were going to all this great effort to make this really airtight, watertight home that is just going to be absolutely amazing. But we had crap equipment. When I mean crap equipment, we had one brand of furnace on the upstairs. We had a different brand of a furnace in the basement. And then the one air conditioning condenser that was outside was another brand. So it was almost like someone had taken pieces from the landfill or like stuff that had come out of other people's job sites and just tossed them in and made them work. It was not great. It was not efficient. There was tons of air leakage. It was terrible. So homeowner decided to spring for a better system. We ended up replacing it with a Trane 95% efficient furnace. We did the same in the basement, and then we added 2 14-seat air conditioning units. And then this puppy right there, our ERV, we made this house so airtight compared to what it was. We needed to be able to bring in fresh air. We did not want the house to be sick. We didn't want people to be getting sick from dirty air. So we installed that ERV, and it made a world of a difference on this project. So wasn't part of the plan originally, but that ended up costing us $23,000. So part of the budget that you just kind of have to deal with. This was an interesting piece. So we used Zip-R. If you watched the series, you know that. Interesting story how it came to be was when I met the homeowner for the first time. This is photos of the inside of his garage of the house that we remodeled. He told me that he's a big Build Show fan. He loves the show. He's watched a ton of stuff, and he just loves Zip-R and how energy efficient it is and how it's great for the house. And he really wanted to put it on his remodel, and he was going to do this remodel himself for many years. So he tried to go to the lumber store and purchase this. It wasn't sold in Utah. It's really not sold in Utah often. They don't stock it. So he drove to another state, purchased 2 trailer loads of Zip-R and brought it back to Utah and was going to put it on the outside of his house. Well, when he hired us, we ended up getting an engineer involved, and we've never been able to get Zip-R to work in our seismic zone. A lot of it has to do with the amount of shear walls and just like the lateral racking, things that are happening with the engineering that they consider this foam to be a pivot point. So like when the nail comes in there, they consider if the wall starts shaking that this part's gonna bend on the nail. So structural engineers are really afraid of it here, and it's just not something that they really can like make work. Well, luckily for us, I felt bad because this homeowner had purchased so much money worth of Zip-R, we had to figure out a way to make it work. On this house, and if you've seen the episodes, you'll know we talked about this, but we had all of this strapping. They're called lead braces, and this was the way that they had the house secured from racking back when this was built in the 70s. Obviously, the sheeting wasn't doing anything because it was cardboard sheeting. So we were able to use the Zip-R, but it's just something to think about. If you're wanting to use that in Utah, you really need to work with your engineer to find a way to make it work. There's another great shot of that lead brace that's just kind of on a slant there. So let's talk a little bit about the insulation choice, because we stripped the outside. We're working from the drywall out, and we're trying to decide how do we re-insulate this house. We didn't want to net and blow in fiberglass. We didn't want to toss bats in the wall. So we decided to use closed cell foam. So you'll notice here in this photo, all of this yellow. So what we did was we came through and sprayed the closed cell foam from the outside, filled these cavities with foam, and then applied our Zip-R over the top of it. So it worked out really, really good. The cool thing about the foam is it helped us seal a bunch of penetrations. So in the event where they had like electrical boxes or things that were like cut too big or kind of sloppy cut, which is not uncommon in a house of this age and has probably had a few remodels, this foam just sealed everything up. In addition, it does have a little bit of structural stability, so that was kind of cool, helped out with the house. Definitely wasn't our reason for picking it, but was a huge bonus. And then it made it so easy. This was probably the easiest choice that we could have made for an application from applying from the exterior, because a net and blow would have meant we were netting everything up. What do we do in those rainstorms? What do we do if we get real big winds? Same with the bats, they would have just blown out. But that's the cool thing about this closed cell foam is we were able to apply it and then take a couple days to put the sheeting on and not be stressed out and worried about it. The whole idea was this short-term rental, right? So the biggest thing that we needed to do was make sure that this house had curb appeal. It did not before, and it was rough. So our idea was just, we wanted to lighten up the home. We wanted it to feel more welcoming. We wanted it to feel like it was a place that you wanted to stay. But we also had to make sure that we were paying attention to the cost because this remodel needed to stay cheap. The homeowner wanted to pay for this out of pocket, didn't want to take a loan out. He owned the house outright. So his goal was to fix it up as much as he could for the amount of money he had and be able to rent it out. So I think with the color scheme that they decided on, getting rid of this ugly box bay window that we had out front here that was like restricting the size of the window and causing a whole bunch of water leaks and all kinds of crazy stuff, that helped because that window got about 2 feet bigger in each direction. Putting new windows in that are white, just lightening it, brightening it, all new roof, white gutters, white downspouts, white soffit, like everything just felt better. And then one of the first things that you see when you get to the home is the front door. We swapped that out for a really nice door. This was a Therma-Tru. It sealed well, it opened and closed well. That's just like the first experience you have entering a rental or short-term like Airbnb property. That made a huge difference. So we were able to swap that out, put in a digital lock, make it really easy for him to rent. And then we also swapped out the garage door just to make sure that we had some more light and bright in that garage and make it kind of fun. So my original bid on this job was $181,000, $484,000. This is just a little screenshot of kind of what one of my cost breakdowns looks like. This is actually the exact cost breakdown for this job. I always have kind of these green and yellow things. So everything you're seeing in yellow is an option of something you can add. The things that are in green are usually like an allowance that I've included, like, hey, I'm not totally sure what color or type of siding you want to do, but here's a budget for this particular kind. So we had a pretty detailed budget. I mean, we caught everything we possibly could short of having x-ray vision. So final cost, $208, $534. So if we go back, $181, $208. Like, this is amazing. That cost difference right there is 99% made up of that $23,000 HVAC system that we added. Not to mention we went through and fixed all the rotten lumber. We fixed anything that was damaged, all the fire damage, all the water damage, all the mold damage. We did a full HVAC rebuild. We did a brand new electrical panel. We upgraded the service to 200 amps. And we were able to go through and replace the interior drywall around all those windows that we replaced and replace the trim. So all things considering, if this was $23K and this was $2,600, I mean, that right there makes up the difference that we had from the original bid. So like, we're on budget. I mean, we almost under budget. This was a really bad day for me. We had just finished demolition. We were getting ready to start sheeting the outside of the house. I think this was actually the day that we started sheeting the outside of the house. We had a hose bib on the front of the house that was a copper pipe that wasn't properly soldered together. You can see in the ceiling, if you look right here, see that cut in the drywall? The hose bib comes into the house right here. It had been opened and accessed before. Like, the drywall was already cut. Obviously all the water damage wasn't there, but the drywall was cut and someone had gone in and accessed it in the past. So we knew exactly where it was. But about 3 hours after we started sheeting the house, I went downstairs to check on something and this is what I ran into. So the hose bib got bumped. We ended up tearing it open and finding that the copper pipe was not soldered together. It was literally just like hanging on by a thread and all it needed was a little bump and it was done. So this entire ceiling pooled up with water. We ended up having to dry out the drywall in this space. We had to replace the drywall in this space. We had to repaint because you can see all the paint is bubbling and flaking off. And then we ended up replacing the carpet in this room for the homeowner. This was obviously no cost to them, but remodels, stuff happens. Like it's not uncommon, and you can't let little or even big things stop you from doing remodels. You learn every time. This was a little bit of an expensive lesson learned, but we now pay a little bit more attention and just make sure that even though we're not doing stuff with the plumbing, that we're not bumping it and damaging it and causing issues. So that was painful. All right, start to finish. This slide makes me really happy. So before and after. The house was dark, it was dreary, it was 1970s, it was wood and just, it wasn't great. And now it's light and bright and welcoming and looks really great. So from the time that we showed up on the job site with the dumpster to the time that we gave the owner back the keys, it was about 86 days. So just under 90 days from start to finish, which is, it's crazy, especially with all the weather that we ran into. Again, there's just another bigger shot of the before and after. Even little things, like you'll notice in the after, this was before we had our light fixtures hung, but like we changed and added these side sconces instead of this floodlight that they had around the top of the door, like just little things. In this front entry, they had this one little wall sconce inside that entry to light it up when people showed up. We actually added 4 recessed cans up in here, just brightened it up so that when guests arrived, it was bright. And then this again was like my favorite part. You see this box window here? It was built terribly. I mean, you can see from the outside how much it's rotting and falling apart right now. We took that whole thing off and then we used that entire framed opening to replace it. So we got this much bigger window. That is the family room right as you enter the door. It's brighter, it's more welcoming. We're not going to have to worry about water issues. And then this front door, we were able to take and replace the entire front door. We did a solid door for privacy, but we did full length side lights that I think turned out really beautiful. And then replaced the garage door with something insulated, something nicer, just something a whole lot better. So it ended up turning out really well. I think all in all, we were able to get the house done in less than 90 days. We were on budget, short of the exceptions of the HVAC and the electrical that the homeowner added. And at this point, this home is now worth, I believe, somewhere around $650,000 to $700,000. They likely purchased this house for somewhere around $250,000, and then we put another $200,000 into remodel. So they're upside on this already. They've had renters in the house since 30 days after we handed the keys back over. So the house has been occupied ever since. They did transition a little bit from short-term rental to a little bit longer-term rental. They're using it as like industry business professionals who are staying for maybe 1 or 2 weeks at a time. But this property is bringing in thousands of dollars a month in income, and they're upside. They don't have any loans, they don't have any debts. It is a property that they'll be able to sell in the future if they want to, or they can continue to keep renting it and have that investment property forever. So these remodels are fun. My favorite is the before and after. My favorite is getting able to see something that wasn't that great in the beginning and just see how talented our people and our crew are in the end. And it's always fun to try and beat the clock and make sure that we stay in budget. So I hope you guys had a great time watching this series. This was one that we didn't ever anticipate turning into a series, and it just really, really turned out great. We loved the footage. We loved the project. The homeowner's a big Build Show fan. So I just want to say a huge thank you to Brent. Thank you for letting us remodel your house. Thank you for letting us film it and put it online. It's been really well received, and thank you all so much for watching it. This was a fun series to do, and I hope we get to do more remodel series like this in the future. So if you guys haven't seen all the That 70s remodel episodes, go back and check them out. There's a handful that you can watch, and stay tuned because our next series, Altitude Adjustment, is already airing. So if you haven't watched those episodes yet, go up and click on Build Originals. go to altitude adjustment and check out what we have to offer on that project. That is the polar opposite of this one, but both are very exciting and very entertaining. You guys know you can follow me on social media at Stephanie Builds It, and we'll see you next time on The Build Show.